Hello, everybody. Welcome back. You're listening to the Cast Bros.
That's
I'm
right.
Andrew Castro.
And I'm Adam Castro. This is episode 12 of the Cast Bros. Andrew, how have you been doing?
I have been surviving. Today was my first day of in-class sessions, and
Ooh,
it was rather hectic.
so you're back in school.
Yes, I am officially back in school. I was already in school before, but it was only online classes, and now we're in class again, and I have to sit on my keister for 6 hours straight.
Whoa. What is it like right now going back into school? Because obviously in California and in LA area, it's looking like it's going to happen later on in February, maybe even late February, which is crazy because that's literally almost a year. It is almost 12 months to the dot, and I almost can assume it's going to end up being a full year. It's not going to actually happen until March, I'm sure. But what has it been like for you in a university going back to school and actually seeing other human beings that are not a part of your three household family?
Well, it's actually kind of a toss up because some of the classes are still really strict about what we're allowed to do while we're in classes. We all wipe down our tables, keep our masks on, no food or drinks in the classroom,
Uh,
everybody whispering, that kind of stuff. And it really depends on the teacher because I also have teachers who are like, we know this is a formality. If you guys are willing to risk whatever you want, you do you. We're not going to dictate how you spend your lives. And it's not like people are just like, oh, let's all take off our masks. Let's all start yelling in each other's faces. It's just like, oh, I can have a energy drink in my morning class because I just lift up my mask, drink, and put it back down.
right, right.
Uh, and
Which is
then on the
actually a very like weird thing. I remember I went into a store or something and I brought a drink with me. It's so funny. We have to ask ourselves those questions now of like, is it wrong for me to have an open drink with my germs kind of on it? And like, is it weird? Is it wrong? I don't know. But yeah, like, and then do I need to like somehow try to make the time between when I pull my mask down and drink it as minimal as possible, or what's going on here?
But then at the same time, I have at least one teacher who said he's gotten already in this first week and a half of school, three students who have either called in sick with COVID or have said they may have been exposed to somebody who has COVID. So it's
Uh,
it's a toss up. We're not really sure how everything's going to happen yet because this would be the end of the incubation period. If people came to campus, started eating on campus, started going to classes, because some classes were mandatory in class classes, if they started doing that, slowly starting to get exposure, this would be when the incubation period would end and people would actually start showing symptoms.
yeah, yeah.
So it's a toss up, but
Well, I mean,
it's
and here's
one
the
I
deal too. Here's the deal too. Like in LA right now, I follow a lot of the like Channel 5 news, ABC, CNN, MSNBC, Fox, all that stuff. I follow them and they're all saying like, hey, it's at the point now where one in three people in LA County are testing positive, one in three, or at least have tested positive. So I mean, everybody's been doing everything that they can and being as safe as they seem fit, or being as safe as possible, and it's still spreading. Like the very fact that this is a disease that will be staying with us has been like super apparent this whole time, and there's no way that they were going to keep this from like not getting to anybody. So the more time goes on, the more it's going to be just like the flu, to where it's going to be something we live with year to year. So to even hear you say like that people are calling in sick, well, like on one hand, we know people are going to continue to pass this on, and on the other hand too, it's January. It's like, it's January. This is the season where people do call in sick no matter what. I went on a night run and my nose got all cold and everything, and I started like sneezing a little bit, and I'm like, that's just what happens when you go run at night. Like this is the season of getting those little allergies and little cold sicknesses, and it not be related to COVID-19. So it's just funny to hear you talk about that. But anyways,
what about
anything
you?
else?
How's your week been going? Mine has been very uneventful. So segue on to you because there's Not a lot going on here. It's just sleep, computer, class. That's it.
Yeah, I have to say this was a very productive week for me. I went ahead and posted maybe 3 different cover videos for guitar. Had a lot of guitar practicing. There were 2 live stream concerts that I watched. Anne Berlin's Paper Tiger live stream, which is basically their album New Surrender, which is a super, super special album for me, super emotional. Great songs on that album. And then also Emery's I'm Only a Man, another really, really awesome album. I also spent a lot more time running and listening to podcasts this week. Started running like 6 miles a night, which gives you about an hour to listen to a full episode of a podcast. So I was listening to a lot of Ben Shapiro, listening to a lot of revisiting the Emery guys from Bad Christian Podcast. Started listening to a lot of John Cooper with Cooper stuff. So just a lot of information. And right now with everything going on, just kind of getting different perspectives. It was nice to hear a bunch of different voices and hear a bunch of different perspectives. So it was honestly a really productive week for me. Yeah. So I don't think that anyone has been able to get away from the like drama that has come with this week. This is the week of what went down at the Capitol. And so just a lot of drama and rhetoric and a lot of people picking sides and pointing fingers and everything. So I was kind of not vocal about it on my Instagram and not vocal about it in our, the Cast Bros page and everything. But today, you guys, you're going to hear it from us as far as what our views are and everything that went down. Not even
start
just
breaking everything down, at least what we know of, what's been brought to our attention, and what we've actually looked into.
Yeah. I mean, last episode was so much fun. We didn't talk about anything political. It was actually one of the only episodes we didn't talk about absolutely anything political. And I'm sure our listeners were like, finally, they like let go of the whole politics thing. But we're reeling it back in for this episode just because we can't get away from it. And we also don't feel like we should be quiet about how we feel about all these things that are going on. And so,
to kick it off, we want to start with a music video from a band that we both grew up with.
Yeah.
Hawk Nelson.
Good old Hawk Nelson.
Singing a song that we've been listening to since we were kids. It's very politically motivated, but it's consistent. And you guys are going to see why. We're going to break it down for you guys.
I'm actually curious because I know I listened to a bunch of these bands before you did, and you just kind of inherited, we've talked about it in the last episode, right? Like Reliant K, Stellar Cart, right. Hawk Nelson, they all kind of blend together for you. And like, when did you start to listen to Hawk Nelson, and what were your first memories with the band, since this is kind of our first song review of theirs?
The earliest concert that I remember going to, I distinctly remember the song Hello by Hawk Nelson, and they passed out kazoos. And for those of you who don't know, there's a very short kazoo solo in that song.
Kazoo solo, man. It's a straight up kazoo solo.
And it was like the highlight of the song for me as a kid, and it's the only reason I ever owned a kazoo. That's my earliest memory of Hawk Nelson. But
this is probably gross. It was actually my kazoo. I don't remember us buying 2. I think it was my kazoo, and you would use it, which is kind of gross.
At the concert, I remember that.
Were they free kazoos? Oh, okay, maybe.
So. I'm not sure. I don't remember. I was like 5. I don't even know. But
yeah, it's actually a really good song. If you've ever
really good solo.
Yeah. It's a really good solo too. You have to check it out. It's better than any solo that you can play on a guitar. That's for sure.
And then the earliest I remember hearing their music, it was an MP3 player. And Adam might remember this one. It was a little blue, like running MP3 player that you're supposed to strap to your arm. but nobody else wanted it in our family. So my
Uh-huh.
parents and Adam just loaded it up with music. It was mostly Stephen Curtis Chapman and Hawk Nelson.
Yeah. Yeah. It was all the contemporary, like softer Christian music. I was the gatekeeper of all the music, by the way. Like I was the one who like found everything. And if there were songs that I knew you would really like the Stellar Card and Hawk Nelson and Reliant K, more of that fast-paced stuff, Family Force 5 when we started listening to them, that was music that Andrew would inherit. And then I was also the one who would like put the phones on the computer, like link the phones with the computer and start feeding in their phones all of the music that I had. So all of the music you guys got is really because of me. So you can thank me later. But yeah, I think it was that little iPod MP3 player thing that once I had upgraded to an iPod Touch, I think by that time you had already learned how to do it for yourself and found YouTube and started just listening to music on your own. But for me,
I'm the one that put music on mom's phone now.
Yeah.
Because my computer apparently is the only one that can run that program now.
That's your job now, yeah. But for me, Hawk Nelson was one of the very first bands that I listened to, along with like Switchfoot and Cutlass, Jeremy Camp, Thousand Foot Crutch, and Hawk Nelson was right there in line with everybody else. Letters to the President being the first album. And I actually remember being really excited about this new album that ended up coming out. And I think it's called Smile, It's the End of the World, because I had heard a few singles already, and it just sounded like a more mature album. Letters to the President was already like a very fun, a little bit more like pop punk kind of album, and alternative pop punk, if that's even a thing. But like, I remember thinking like, wow, all the music that's coming out of Smile, It's the End of the World sounds like really mature. And I honestly think it's their last really mature album, because what happened after that was like Hawk Nelson Is My Friend or Live Life Loud, and those were definitely more fun kind of albums. I feel like Smile, It's the End of the World was the very last mature, like really deep messages kind of songs that we could go back and listen to that apply to even today, even things that are going on today. So yeah.
But like we said, before we get into politics, here we're going to show you One Thing I Have Left by Hawk Nelson from the album Smile, It's the End of the World.
Will someone please radio for help? 'Cause I think
Oh yes, the classic guitar player standing on cars. Oh yeah.
And Mom wondered why we never wanted to cut our hair in high school. Junkyard's the perfect place for children to congregate.
Oh yeah.
And you can take the one thing I have left. I give it all away for so much less. Could even take the heart inside my chest. Whoa, whoa. And you can take the one thing I have left. Baby,
I love this song. So many good memories.
but you can't take who I am. Whoa, whoa.
All right. So let's go into those that first batch of lyrics there. Will someone please radio for help? Because I think I'm allergic to myself. They think they can throw us all away, and we got to stop before it's all too late. There's got to be a better way. They dissect everything that we say to try to make us feel this way. Obviously, pressure and peer pressure from anybody. In this video you're seeing a bunch of kids, and Hawk Nelson was for sure like a kids band. They were definitely geared towards youth, definitely geared towards the middle schooler and high schooler going through the angsty.
They were the transition to Skillet. They were
yeah, they were the gateway drug to Skillet and Thousand Foot Crutch and such. So yeah, so obviously these aren't going to be like super adult kind of messages, but at the same time, can definitely be applied to things that are going on right now. Dissecting everything to make us feel this way. Going into that chorus saying that you can take the one thing that I have left. I'd give it all away for much less. You can even take the heart inside my chest. And you can take the one thing I have left and beat me to the ground and take my breath, but you can't take who I am. You know,
And that has the implications of they twist our words, they dissect what we say to try to make us feel guilty about our convictions, to try to make us feel guilty about the things that we hold true, that we hold true to ourselves, that we believe in wholeheartedly. And when that doesn't work, they beat us down. They constantly berate us with just spewings of telling us we're wrong, telling us, well, you're the ones who are full of hate. Oh, you're this, you're that. And when that doesn't work, they get violent, beat me down to my last breath.
Yeah. And it really does. It is like, you can do all these things to me, but you're never going to change my identity, and you're never going to change my beliefs. You're never going to change who I am as a person. Even if you take all those other things away, like take them, because they don't make up who I am, you know? Really powerful message. Let's keep going on to the second verse.
And I swear we were born to let you down. We scream but never make us
America's greatest hero.
Did you even watch that show?
Don't know which direction.
I'm watching it again, actually.
We are America right now.
We are America right now. That's right.
And they're Canadian.
Even they can see it. They meant North American. That's what they meant.
And you can take the one thing I have left. I give it all away for so much less. Could even take the heart inside my chest. Whoa, whoa. And you can take the one thing I have left. Beat me to the ground and take my breath. But you can't take who I am. Whoa, whoa.
Okay. I have to confess something. I totally have to confess something real quick before we go into the lyrics.
What?
Everybody has these songs. Everybody. I don't care if you're a cool guy or a nerdy guy or a jock, or I don't care. I don't care what kind of person you are. You had songs that you would sing in your room or in your car or in the shower or in the bathroom or outside for the world to hear. You had songs that you would just scream out to the top of your lungs, maybe even hold a little like, you know, microphone, or if you didn't have a microphone, maybe a hairbrush or maybe something. You had songs like that, right? Listening to this section totally gave me flashbacks of me as a kid, like just in my room singing this out, you know, at the top of my lungs, pretending I was Jason Dunn and like performing it in my room, man. That's
still
how
do that. Who are you kidding?
Hey. But yeah, second verse here, it says that I swear we were born to let you down. We scream, but we never make a sound. We point, but don't know which direction. We are America right now. That is.
I never understood who he meant by that line. I swear we were born to let you down. That could mean that they are a Christian band. That could mean God. That could mean our parents, the generation that came before us. That could mean the people that are berating us, the ones who are so judgmental of how we're spending our lives, our convictions. We were born to let you down because we were born to stand for what we stand for. And I never really found out or understood what that lyric was for. So
I mean, it could mean any one of those things, man. I mean, the music video is these kids who are basically like, hey, here's a junkyard, and it looks like it would be kind of fun if we played in it, but there's this dog that's going to come and eat us if we try to have fun here. And the whole video is about this dog like trying to eat these kids.
See, that's not what I saw. That's not what I'm seeing in this music video. I'm seeing a bunch of kids went to the junkyard and they said, hey, there's a dog on that other side of the fence. You'll be cool if you can outrun the dog on the other side of the fence. This is peer pressure. This video is about peer pressure.
But the one kid who's a hero, who's wearing the suit and everything, goes over the fence and is, I don't know what he's doing there, but he's having fun doing it, and he's running away from the dog and everything in his PF Flyers, might I add.
This bears a striking resemblance to Sandlot. Don't know why, but
yeah, not sure what the copyright laws are there, buddies, but no, but it could, a guard dog, is trying to keep what is there safe or whatever, and it's kind of, I think that a lot of us feel like if we step out of line or do something we're not supposed to, it kind of feels like a guard dog just barks at us, right? Like any small thing. If you've ever like been around a house that has a guard dog, you just step in that direction and the dogs go crazy, man. They go crazy. Even like, little house dogs, like what our parents have, or get, you hear a doorbell ring and they're just like, who's over there? Come on, who's over there? Like, what are you doing over here? And they're just going crazy, crazy, crazy. And that kind of feels like when you have a viewpoint that other people don't have and you want to voice it even just a little bit or even hint that you believe that thing, then people just go crazy.
The buzzword now is people get triggered.
People get triggered, people rage, and that is what a guard dog does. Basically, if there's one sign of opposition, they rage. If you're not one of mine, then I'm going to start yelling at you and attacking you. Not sure if that's, I don't want to overthink it too much, but that could be applicable for the song. So it could mean, like, hey, there's oppressive parents who don't understand that, hey, rock music is not satanic, and I just want to listen to rock and listen to Christian rock bands and stuff, and parents who keep me from doing that. You can't take away who I am. You can take away my rock CDs, but you can't take away what I love. That could be the smallest version of this, or even to the biggest version, like, hey, I believe in freedom, and I believe in freedom of speech and not censoring people on social media who don't agree with liberal views, the things that we're going through right now in our country. But no matter what, that line that he says that we point but don't know which direction, like we really don't know what we're pointing at or who we're pointing at or what ideas we're pointing at, and that is literally America right now. That is literally America right now. People are pointing in every direction except at themselves. People are pointing in every direction except at, reflecting on what they believe and saying like, hey, is what I believe sound? Does it make sense? Does it hold up against integrity? Yeah. So anything else you want to add to that?
No, I think you summed it up really well.
All right, let's keep going. I love this bridge.
How can I be? How can I take? How come I am so tired of all these charades? How can I be? How can I hold? How can I see if everyone else is to blame? Don't wanna be the.
This is the closest thing we had to a breakdown as young children.
We point the finger, think everyone else is to blame. Blame. Everyone else is to blame.
And that sums up a whole nother portion of what we're going through right now. We point the fingers, think everyone else is to blame. How can I be the one that's wrong? How can I be the one holding the gun? How can I be the one that's hurting people if everyone else is to blame? If they're the one, they're bad. So everything must be their fault. And this is like, to be a little more specific, when people are saying, oh, there's riots in the streets, there's property being destroyed. Well, this is Trump's fault. Is Trump the one throwing Molotovs at cops?
Who's the one actually holding the guns, right? Who are the ones actually lighting the flames? Who are the ones actually committing the crimes? Those are the people we should be pointing the fingers at, those specific people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yet we point the finger and think everybody else is to blame. That is exactly what is going on in America right now. And I apologize to Hawk Nelson for taking this beautiful song and making it political, which may not have been their intention at all. And
They're
just
just
so
like,
we
bro, we
can,
wanted to make a video about a dog. Why'd you have to go and do that?
just some kids trying to get their plane back over the fence. Yes, it's strikingly similar to Sandlot, but who cares? PF Flyers, Converse, a ball, a plane. Uh, you know,
I think it was the same kind of dog. I
Might
don't
have
even
been the
think
same
that.
kind of dog even. But just to put a little pretty bow on this, that song at its heart is just talking about how if you are true to your convictions and you're true to your beliefs and you are true to who you are, your identity, that is truly all that matters. Like if you have a conviction, then it shouldn't matter what the consequences are for that conviction. If you truly believe in that thing, you will take the consequences, which for a lot of people means losing your friends. For a lot of people, it means losing certain privileges. For a lot of people, it means losing, your voice even on social media. For a lot of people, it may even be losing your life. And for people in other countries, losing your life completely, getting beating down, both figuratively and literally. But they cannot take away who you are. They cannot take away that belief that's inside of you, and they cannot take away your identity, especially if your identity is in Christ, because for us to live is Christ and to die is gain. We'd be dying and living, dying for Christ and living with him in eternity. So,
And I think it's important to say that in some cases at least, it doesn't matter what those convictions are. I would sooner respect somebody that I completely disagreed with, whether it's political, whether it's religious, whether it's moral. If they go to that extent for their convictions, I respect them far more than somebody who will act upon their convictions and then blame somebody else for their own actions.
no,
Two very different things. Different.
So thank you, Hawk Nelson, for this song. It's beautiful. It got me through my childhood. It got Andrew through his infancy and into his childhood. But just kind of, going off of that, we are in a period of a lot of controversy and finger pointing right now with what happened at the Capitol. Just so everybody is aware, Andrew, what happened on January 6th, just so that everybody is aware of what we're talking about.
So from what I understand, a crowd, it didn't seem like a horde. It was more like a crowd of Trump supporters gathered outside the Capitol building. And a select group of them decided it'd be okay to storm the Capitol building. From what I found, still images and some short videos, it was more like a gentle push going in, but they were still overwhelming security. They were still overwhelming law enforcement to get in. And there were some very colorful characters. Mind you, there was one dude dressed as a bison. He was a big focus for a lot of it. And it's important to say we check ourselves constantly on this podcast to not be hypocritical. And we're going to say this right now. Condemnation is due where condemnation is due. What these people did, overwhelming law enforcement, pushing their way, forcing their way, hurting people, that was wrong.
Yeah, storming the Capitol and committing these crimes, committing these acts is wrong. And Andrew's right. We check ourselves out constantly. We check ourselves constantly. And
you check yourself out constantly. You're a personal
joking. We check ourselves constantly because honestly, we don't want to be hypocrites. We don't want to have double standards. We don't want to say that something is wrong when it's right, and we don't want to say that something is right when it's wrong. A big part of why we came out against the BLM riots was because we saw, and more specifically, we came out against BLM was because we saw that systematically after every BLM rally, there was a BLM riot. And after every BLM protest, there was a BLM riot. And not only that, but these things weren't being spoken against. They were called peaceful protests. People were getting let out on bail by Democratic representatives, and people were seen as heroic and almost celebrity status for being at these rallies and protests and being a part of these riots. People were told to bow down to the people who are rioting. Like it's crazy, crazy stuff. And because we saw all of that, we're like, hey, you can have a heart for the Black community, and you can have a heart for minorities, and you can have a heart for people who are oppressed and people who are not well off, and not put it under the umbrella of BLM, and align yourself with these activities, align yourself with the things that are going on here. And mind you, there are still people who would give money to BLM with a great conscience, with good intentions. And we would never, I have friends, Andrew has friends who support BLM and support the idea of BLM, who we would never blame for these actions happening. We don't say, hey, you are responsible for the riots. You are responsible for cities being burned down and businesses being destroyed and families now that are dealing with the consequences of these things. It wasn't them. They weren't the ones who were physically committing the crime, So when something like this happens at the Capitol, where before the Capitol, there was a Trump rally, there was a Trump protest. He gave a speech where there was a lot of rhetoric that was saying we need to fight. We need to fight. Fight was thrown around a lot. We need to stand for our freedom and stand up. And all of that was 100% raising the temperature, right? It was definitely getting the crowd riled up. But when you look at what was exactly said, okay, and this is where everybody in the country is kind of falling on different spectrums. And so we want to at least say right off the bat, everybody who stormed the Capitol, guilty. Doesn't matter who it was. Doesn't matter whether it's the conspiracy theory kind of Antifa people. It doesn't matter whether it was actually Trump supporters, and it doesn't matter whether it's just some people in DC who wanted to have a good time and break the law. Doesn't matter who it was. The people who stormed the Capitol, guilty and should see jail time. We 100% believe that. And we would expect the same thing from the other side as to the BLM riots and all of that stuff. But
because there were sections of people widely visible who did not add to the riots. They were there to protest. They were there to speak their piece. They were there to do what they said they were going to do, protest. But there were criminals who raided stores, who burnt cars, set people's homes ablaze, and that is wrong. Those are criminal acts, and we condemn those as well.
The line is the law, right? The line is the law, and once you cross the line, that's where we have to say, hey, I don't support you anymore. And I don't support anybody who went to the Capitol and did those things. And and it's what's funny is that I don't think really any reasonable conservative Republican voice is supporting them. We're seeing all throughout the news, because we knew that this was going to happen, that because they were so bold, they weren't wearing masks, they were tweeting selfies, and they were taking pictures of themselves inside the Capitol, in the offices and in the halls and everything, taking things. We're seeing a lot of arrests. The news is posting a lot of arrests from what happened at the Capitol, this one event. And we're seeing every single day a new group of people were found. It was this person, that person. I think it's almost in over 100 people now who have been arrested, or at least over 50. And like, that's great. Like, honestly, good. Like, that's a good thing. I think that the response that the Republican and Conservative Party is just like, why didn't we see that at the BLM riots then? Like, why wasn't it every day we were seeing people who were involved in things like that being found and put in jail? Like, I don't think any of us, if you're a reasonable person, should agree with someone burning down someone else's business. But once this happens on the other side, from these people, like, all of a sudden, like, we're comparing property versus government areas. Like, we're starting to compare all these things. And even the Andrew had said, it wasn't to the same extent. That may be true, but I don't even want to I don't even think that that's an important argument, because once we start saying like, oh, well, it wasn't as bad as this, and the only reason they rioted was because the BLM riots were happening and they got away with it for so long, then the other side can say like, oh, well, the only reason they were rioting was because of so many cop shootings, and the cops can go and say, well,
oh no, that wasn't an offense. I wasn't trying to defend them. I was just saying the fact that even though it could be seen as less than the BLM riots in terms of destruction, we still condemn them.
yeah,
Even we condemn them to an equal level as the BLM riots.
yeah, we call wrong what's wrong, right? We have to call wrong what's wrong and call right what's right, and call questionable what is questionable, right? The whole Trump thing, when he gave his speech, and this is really where it boils down to, is Trump responsible then for these few people who committed these crimes out of the many people who were protesting there? He called for them to go and protest. He called for them to fight. And his definition of fighting, given his speech, what he laid out in his speech, which later got censored and taken down, which is crazy. But what he said was, I am standing by my belief that the election was stolen, right? I'm standing by my belief that the election is stolen, and that it was a landslide, and it was all these things that Trump says that he believes as far as the election, which believe it or don't believe it, whatever. But all of those things are happening, and then he says, go and fight, and also says that it's up to Congress now. It is up to Congress now to make the decision, or to make the right decision, what he views as the right decision, and obviously what all these protesters viewed as the right decision as well, to vote a certain way. Even though that's not like possible, they still believed it to be possible, and that's why they went and protested. So, calling them to go and protest, saying it's up to Congress, also saying to peacefully protest, also saying, later on saying, go home, be peaceful. We are the party of law and order. We do support blue lives, and like all those different things. That is what the Republican Party stands for, and that's why he said those things. So when the few people who decided to break from that, group thought that, hey, we're going to stay lawful, we're just going to protest because we believe this thing, when the few people break from that and decide to commit crimes, they are no longer a part of the vast majority of the conservatives and Republican Party. That's not the majority. That is not the whole. That is not the whole representation of conservatives in the Republican Party.
Just as we would never expect those who stepped over the line at the BLM riots or at any of those far left radical situations to be a representation of the entire liberal political spectrum or the Democratic Party. We would never expect that to be the case. Right.
And I have Democratic friends. Andrew has Democratic friends. I've got Democratic clients that I respect and who respect me, and I would never blame them for events or things that happen that are, supported by Democratic representatives like Biden and Kamala Harris saying that, hey, if this was BLM, it would have turned out differently, or hey, we support BLM, we're going to give money to BLM, or all of the representatives who were bailing out people who were being jailed for the BLM riots. Like, I would never say that their beliefs are completely aligned, but I would expect them to call out bad. I would expect them to say this is wrong. I would hope that they would say burning down a business is a wrong thing to do. At least call it out. At least say what wrong is. But on this other side, when we say that this is wrong, when we call this out, it's still not enough. Just because we may have voted for Trump, or just because we are conservative, or just because we are Republicans, all of a sudden we're guilty by association.
And they want to say, when we say that they aren't part of us, when they cross that line, they're no longer their views are no longer aligned with ours. They want to say, oh, you're just copping out because you don't want to take responsibility for what they did. Of course I don't want to take responsibility for what they did. I didn't do it.
Exactly.
I wasn't holding the gun.
And this is where the line of logic goes, that if Trump was responsible for raising the temperature, then he was responsible for their actions. And if he's responsible for their actions, then anybody who supported him and him becoming president 4 years ago, by the way, 4 years ago, he became president. So this isn't like direct consequence. They're saying that basically anybody who supported him becoming president 4 years ago is guilty of causing these events and is a sympathizer. I made the mistake of commenting last night on a Occupy Democrats post, which if you are a Democrat, you'll probably feel like your opinions are being voiced there because they're very, one-sided opinions, and that's fine. You can believe whatever you want to believe. That's fine. But when you go against what they say, there's, I made a comment last night that basically said something along the lines of like, hey, look, the post was saying that Republicans can no longer say that Blue Lives Matter. They can no longer say that because this riot resulted in cops who were attacked and injured. And Republicans say all the time, Blue Lives Matter, Blue Lives Matter. No. They don't matter to the Republican Party. It was all about politics. It was all about show. Just because these few people decided to go and attack cops who do not represent the whole of the Republican Party, now they're saying the whole of the Republican Party cannot say that Blue Lives Matter, even though pretty much nobody is justifying these actions and nobody is saying what they are doing, what they did was right. All of a sudden now, all the Republican Party is held accountable for that and basically said, you can no longer say that. So all I said on the page was that you can't say that the actions of a few represent the beliefs of the whole or something to that extent. So I woke up this morning to like 25 comments saying that I was a terrorist sympathizer and a piece of garbage. So
you should have commented, oh no, I meant the African American community that commits crimes. They don't represent the whole. You should have flipped it on them, and then they'd be like, oh crap, we're going to delete all these. Because that's what it comes down to. We do not take, and I'm being sarcastic for anyone listening to this. That was a sarcastic moment. We do not take the minority and use them to justify we don't take the majority and use them to justify the minority. We don't take the minority and use them as an example of the majority. Right. We do not take any minority to represent the majority.
Yeah,
in any situation.
You are responsible for your actions. You are responsible for your actions. Okay. And just like the song said earlier, right? How can I hold the gun? How we want to blame everybody else but ourselves. No. You blame yourself for your actions. Okay. So when people try to pin what happened at the Capitol on Trump, and then they don't even need to legally make it true. Like an impeachment is all about votes. So it's funny because I guess Trump can give a defense against impeachment. So they decided to impeach Trump, by the way. They decided to censor Trump, by the way. So after he made this speech and after what happened on the Capitol and after they blamed him for what happened, they censored his Twitter account, and subsequently in the following days, suspended him from Twitter permanently, suspended him from Facebook, suspended him from Instagram, suspended him from YouTube. Heck, they even suspended him from Spotify, believe it or not. And I heard a joke, someone saying, like, what is he going to do? Listen to Eye of the Tiger and get riled up and want to, like...
And in response to all of this, he goes...
cut him out completely, And
in response to all this, he stole our idea, where we had said in an earlier episode, we wanted to make a Parler account because it seemed like a good idea, supposed to be founded on free speech, where you can basically say whether it's opinion or fact, free speech. So he makes a Parler account, and now the app almost doesn't exist. And It's not just they took it off the App Store. It's not just they stopped certain phones from using it. Their lawyers ditched them. They started trying to get their servers taken down. They are trying to destroy Parler.
Yeah, why? Parler is competition. Parler's not even that big. And yet they're being picked on. They're honestly just being picked on by Google and Apple and Amazon. Amazon provided their servers and they took them down. So Amazon was like, if you don't conform to what basically Twitter and Instagram and Facebook are doing, which is kind of funny because they're not really doing it. They're just doing it towards Trump and a lot of people who voice that their opinion is similar to Trump's. They're just doing it to those people. We'll get to that later on. But
They
basically
want to say that the site allows people to incite violence.
Yes.
And the reason this is an issue is because inciting violence is not a definable term. You cannot say what is inciting violence and what isn't. You just
no. You can say what's inciting violence, but if you look at what is there's certain standards. There's certain standards that have to be met when it comes to inciting violence. But regardless, what Trump had said does not meet those standards. Basically, what he had said doesn't meet those standards because he was not specific towards saying, storm the Capitol. He didn't say go and storm the Capitol, breach the gates, attack the police, and threaten go in and threaten their lives. He didn't say those things. And he actually did specifically say what he wanted them to do. He did say go up to the Capitol. He did say to protest at the Capitol, and he did say it's up to Congress now, and hopefully they will do the right thing. So given those things, like you can't put inciting violence on him as far as legally. But the problem with that is that you don't need to do it legally. The House just has to vote to impeach him, and then that he'll be impeached, which he was. So now we're awaiting what's going to happen in the Senate, because then the Senate will have to vote, because this isn't about legality anymore. This is about popularity. This is about and politics. Like, they want Trump to go through this second impeachment, to be removed from office, and to not have the ability to come back in 2024, which we don't think is a good idea. I think we both would agree, right? I don't think that Trump should run for 2024. I think we need a younger, more reasonable, better rhetoric kind of person.
I will agree with you when I see a better candidate.
Yeah.
It's not, and again, this isn't I think Trump is good. It's, I don't see a better choice. Not yet, anyway.
We're gonna I foresee it now. We're gonna end up seeing the anybody but Kamala hashtags, anybody but Biden, anybody but Kamala, toss up as to which one it's going to be in 4 years. But yeah, that's what's happening as far as the House of Representatives, Pelosi side of things, is that they did impeach him, and now it's going to the Senate and they're going to vote. But as far as the practical, voice of the people kind of thing, like, it's crazy that this event was going on, and that rather than saying like, hey, look, this is what Trump said, hey, look, he's inciting violence, or hey, look, see what he says and decide for yourself, they just censored him. Like
and
any
they
people
get to control what people heard from it. They get to
Right.
say, he said this. Well, where did he say that? We can't show you.
I remember feeling stupid because I'm like, where is this? Like, people are saying he incited violence. It honestly left you with no other choice but to agree with people or to seem crazy for not agreeing. Because I'm not someone who's just going to blindly say like, oh yeah, sounds like Trump, sure. I'm going to be like, no. What did he actually say? What
And
did
that's
he
not
actually
even
say?
to oppose the other person. I'm not saying you're wrong. I just want to hear it.
Yeah. Or and honestly, and this isn't to defend Trump as a person. He's a like, by all means, he's not a reasonable person. By all means,
We've said this before, right? We've
I hope we said this before. We don't like him as a person. He's not a good person by any means. But we have seen how the media and how the Democratic Party has taken advantage of that truth and has inflated it to be things that it's not. All the times that he's been taken out of context to seem racist, we've looked at the context, and that's not what it was. All the times where they take him out of context and basically call him a white supremacist and say he doesn't condemn white supremacy, I mean, there's endless amounts of content proving that he did condemn it constantly throughout the last 4 years and even before that.
Mm-hmm.
So we know that this is a pattern that the media will say something and out of context it sounds true, but in context it's not. So I'm not going to blindly just think like, yeah, that sounds like something Trump would do because he said all these other things that sound like that. Of course he incited violence. That's what he does. That's just what he is. He's a white supremacist,
And
racist person.
it comes down to the media has lied to us for years. And for those of us that have looked for what the media has said and said, well, that's not what you told us. That's not what the media said. So they must be wrong or they must be lying. Now we don't trust them. Of course, a media that has lied to us for years on both sides. We're not, again, we don't like picking sides, especially when it comes to media, because they both lie all the time. But you can imagine how terrifying it is when they get to control the information. It's not just we get to pick and choose what we tell other people. They get to control what gets out at all.
And it comes down to this. It comes down to whether you believe that it's illegal or not to believe that the election was stolen or that the election was rigged or that there was some sort of fraudulent activity within the election. You know, is that illegal to believe that? No, it's not illegal. It's not illegal to believe something that may or may not be true. There are flat earthers who live in America. There are people who believe that if you rub oil on your stomach, that it'll make you lose weight. There's people who believe that, Kingdom Hearts 4 is going to come out next year. There's people who believe certain things that may or may not be true. And, they have every right to believe that. That's fine. And again, the line is the law. Did Trump have the right to say those things and not do anything physically violent against it? I think he pressured Pence or something, or he called him a name or something and said that you better make the right choice or something, be a patriot, whatever. And Mike Pence did his job, people, I know that some of the Republican Party, some are calling him a traitor. He did his job as a reasonable person, as a reasonable conservative Republican. He did his job. Some people are calling some of the Republicans, the Republican representatives, traitors. Some are saying that who don't represent the whole of the Republican Party. We don't agree with that, but they are calling them traitors. They're just doing their jobs. And when it came down to it, they didn't do the illegal thing. They did the legal thing and did their jobs. And now Biden's going to be president. And we said that if Biden was going to be president, he would be our president. We would support him, pray for him. But that doesn't mean that we're going to just agree with everything that he says. And what happened after the events of the Capitol and what he said, what Biden said, and what Kamala Harris said was extremely divisive, and only did more to raise the temperature after events like that, because that was an opportunity for us to say, look, we are all in this country together. There are 70 plus million people who believe this thing, and there's 70 million plus people who would have voted for this thing. And we all need to come together now as a country and basically say that, all right, now that we're moving forward into the next 4 years in this next term, let's fight to bring unity, come together, and help you to understand that even if you don't agree with me becoming president, like, let's find some commonalities here, let's find some peace, and let's move forward. But of course, what ended up happening was they basically said that what happened at the Capitol would not have happened if it was a BLM riot. Wouldn't have been the same. They wouldn't have been able to walk out with their lives if it was a BLM protest, which is crazy because they already had protests there before, and a lot of them, all of them walked out with their lives. I think, it's crazy.
Most of them walked out with catch and release. They caught them, stopped them from rioting, and then said, okay, go home.
I think that what happened here with Biden's speech and Kamala Harris's speech is like linking different memories and emotions together, because one would think that if you mix in the Kenosha shootings, right, which I don't believe involved any African American at all. I think they were all just white people. But if you link in what happened there, the Jacob Blake shooting, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, if you link all those things together, it would almost make you feel like these all happened at a BLM riot, that BLM riots and all these events are somehow directly linked together in events and emotions, right? So to say that, and all these rhetorics of all the celebrities like LeBron James saying that we can't sleep in our beds anymore, we can't drive anymore without thinking that, we can't go on a run anymore without thinking we're going to get shot, which I know, by the way, I just want to say again, this is not representative of the whole. I know a lot of our listeners or a lot of people feel that way. I think there's people in all races who feel that way, depending on where you live. Okay. I know that that's a reality for a lot of people, but when you make that the reality for the whole, it's just not true. It's just not true for the whole people. And what's happening is that this action of the few of what happened at the Capitol was now being represented as white supremacy. Like they felt like they had the freedom to just barge in and do this without getting shot and without getting attacked. They felt like they had the privilege to just go and do these things, when in reality had nothing to do with that. And again, like, I don't care if they were Trump supporters or happened to be Antifa or were just people who were there wanting to break the law. It doesn't matter. They were wrong and should be convicted of the crime. And no matter what, they do not represent the whole of the Republican and Conservative Party. So to see that there was this division of saying they're white supremacists, and then following that now with the logic that, well, they supported Trump and Trump is a white supremacist and he's racist and he's divided our country and all the Republicans and the conservatives are who supported him should stand down. All, or I should say most of the voices on the liberal side are now saying that conservatives and Republicans should just stand down as representatives of the country, that they shouldn't be like teachers and they shouldn't be holding office. They shouldn't be influencers at all. Like there's this thought and rhetoric that the world and the country would be a better place if they just like Thanos snapped all the Republicans and conservatives out of existence.
And there have been a couple of representations who have talked about making a blacklist, who have talked about finding out who supported Trump and making sure that whoever they are never find work again. And I think I don't care. And this falls in line with, we want to stay away from hypocrisy. We want to be even on both sides. This would be terrifying if this was the other way around. I would never support if the conservatives said all the Democrats, all the liberals step down. I'd say no. That's wrong. That's indoctrination, and that's bad.
And the two parties need each other. The two parties need each other in order to balance each other out. There is such a thing as too conservative. There is such a thing as too conservative, and there is such a thing as too liberal. But now that we have a Democratic president, a Democratic House, a Democratic Senate, and a Supreme Court that right now is conservative, but you better believe that there's a chance that those courts can be packed. And even we just got news right now that there's a bill that's basically going through
that has been introduced to Congress, and it says that they want to abolish the Electoral College and make the presidency a direct election.
Right.
And this is bad. There's a reason that this was put in place to begin with. It was so that the majority does not get to totally dictate everything in this country simply because there's more people.
Right.
It should be that the people who have a smaller population, the states who are underrepresented in Congress should be, or in the House of Representatives, should have just as much of a say in who becomes president as anyone else. It shouldn't be a popularity contest.
Right. The whole point of the Electoral College, so that everybody can have a fair representation of voice and it not be just one for one, because it's not fair that states that have big cities like California and New York are compared to states that don't have those same kind of big cities. So I'm very, like, if we step back and we look at everything, right? Inciting violence is being seen as language that just encourages people to fight for what they believe in, and if you believe in that thing, you're seen as crazy. And now Twitter censoring our president. He's still our president. He's still the president of the United States right now up until the 20th. So for the social media giants to be able to cut out our president without there being any legal actual like proof, like nothing legally happened. He was not legally charged with inciting violence. So they just did that all on their own. They just took it upon themselves to do that. And then you marry that with the fact that Parler, which would not allow that to happen, is being picked on by all these social media giants and tech giants and everything. They're being picked on and forced into a corner to basically, like, I don't think we said this. Google removed the app from Google Play. Apple removed their app from Apple, the Apple App Store. Like, if you have an iPhone, you cannot download Parler. If you have a Samsung, you cannot download Parler. You can't make an account. They're basically saying that we don't want crime to be organized on Parler because they're not inciting violence. Like there haven't been any crimes that have been formed by groups on Facebook and Twitter. Like any of the riots that happened with BLM were not by bringing people together on a social media platform that existed back then. All right. So like, it's just double standards, the taking down things that incite violence when it comes from conservatives and Republicans. When you look back and you see, Trump's head being lifted up, his severed head being lifted up as jokes, and people saying there should be more riots in the streets. There should be unrest. Who said protests needed to be peaceful? Like, there's plenty of rhetoric on there, and I guarantee you most of that coming from the left and the Democratic side are not being taken down or seen as inciting violence when it actually has raised the temperature and led to a lot of that violence. They're not held responsible. They're not going to legally attack them or anything. Everybody's responsible for their own actions. But if you're going to say that this is wrong, we'll be consistent and say that that is wrong as well.
And this is exactly why we pick on ourselves so much, to make sure we're not hypocritical in our statements here on the podcast, because we don't, with the way that we see people that do that, we don't want that to be us. Not just because we don't want our listeners to see us that way, not just because we don't want our viewers, just because we don't want to see ourselves that way.
Right. And I'm old enough to remember, Andrew, I don't know if you remember, but when Proposition 8 came out, right, that same-sex marriage, you could either vote for same-sex marriage or you could vote against same-sex marriage. As a Christian, the Bible says that same-sex marriage is against what God has planned for his creation, for people, for men and women. Marriage is supposed to be between a man and a woman. That is something the Bible teaches. That is something that we believe. And if we have a vote, we're going to vote for that because we believe that that is right. Now, we live in a country where the voting process will either allow what we believe to be as right to be law, or it won't. And that's fine. We all get to believe whatever the heck we want to believe. You can believe that same-sex marriage is right or wrong, and we can believe that same-sex marriage is right or wrong. The problem is when you force other people to believe the same things that you believe, regardless of whether it's legal or not. Again, is it illegal to believe that the election was stolen? It's legal to do so. It's legal to believe that. But when you start saying that, no, we're going to censor you for believing that, we're going to cut you out for believing that, you're going to get fired from your job for even saying that, that's when we start crossing a line. Okay, so, and I mentioned the whole Proposition 8 thing was because when we started as Christians teaching that same-sex marriage is wrong, there were pastors who were being threatened to go to jail. This is just something the Bible teaches. Whether it's legal or not, this is just something the Bible teaches. And that was back then. So what is going to happen now that we do actually have Democratic-led executive branch and legislation, and now, there's a possibility that our Supreme Court will also be Democratic. What's going to happen now when there's going to be further pushing for discrimination laws? There's going to be further pushing for this kind of, hate speech rhetoric, and that's going to be loosely interpreted, right? I'm even thinking
something
like
that happened in California over this past election was that they repealed what was it that made it so that people could not get hired or be given bonuses based on ethnicity and race? They repealed that, but their reason for repealing that was so that people of color could get reparations. They did that specifically for that purpose, but the problem is that was put there for a reason, to protect people of color, to protect people who were being discriminated against.
Right,
And now
right.
they're turning it on its head, and suddenly it's okay.
Yeah.
It's
I'm
and
even thinking like, everything that we just said and marry that with like, what if they do actually get rid of the electoral college and now it is on the majority? You hear crazy things like over in, was it Europe or something? I remember sharing that this was an ad that the best thing that you can do for your child is not have another one, right? That was something that we had mentioned before. And the best thing you can do for your child is not have another one. That goes completely against what the Bible teaches as far as like, hey, let's be fruitful and multiply, right?
Mhm.
Let's be fruitful and multiply, which is what we might have to do if it's going to be based off a majority. Christians, got to do your duty.
Oh my
But
gosh.
like a simple message like that, is that going to, like in freaking China where you're not allowed to have certain children, or I guess that was a law back then. Like this is the near future, or not the near future, that's the near past of what the extremes can be. Like I don't want to see a world where we cannot preach what we believe, or at least believe what we believe, or at least want to not seem crazy for the things that we believe.
And the
When
reason that
70
we're like that,
when potentially 70 million people might actually believe the same thing, and there's just the other half of people who just want to Thanos snap us out of existence,
and I would say the reason we believe that is also because of how we were raised on the Bible through Jesus's life. He is also called Jesus, friend of sinners. We are not called to hate people that disagree with us. We are not called to
Exactly.
hate people that reject Christ, that reject God. And we are not called to push ourselves on other people. We present them with the word of God. We present them with what we believe are convictions. And if they disagree with us, we pray for them. We hope that one day they'll decide for themselves. But until then, that's all we can do. And it's not passive. It is just acceptance that people have to come to the conclusion themselves. We cannot, at least not in any moral capacity, force our beliefs onto someone else, which is why we take such high offense when someone tries to do the same to us.
Right. We don't expect things to go our way. We really don't.
No.
We know that it's probably not going to end up being that the laws are going to align completely with Christian values. This is not a Christian country. We
Not
don't.
anymore.
The majority of people are not Christian, and even if they say they are, then we're going to find out actually who are real Christians by the fruit that they produce through this testing. Through are you going to still go to church when they say that it's illegal to go to church? Are you still going to preach the word of God when they're saying that parts of the word of God are illegal to say? Are you still going to be a representative of who Christ is and who the body of Christ is when they tell you, no, you can't do those things, or no, you need, instead of giving money to those people and helping those causes, you need to be giving money to these causes and those things? Like, these are very practical questions that the Christian's going to have to ask themselves. And, there's a good place to end the podcast here of just like 100%, no matter what, we're going to keep each other accountable as brothers to continuing to live out our lives to glorify Christ. We're not going to be perfect in that. We're not going to be, our views are probably even different in some of these areas that might lean slightly more liberal, slightly more conservative. Like I think that no two Christians are always going to have the same political views. They're not going to have 100% the same political views. But as far as what we believe to be biblical or not biblical, we are always going to bring things to the truth of the Bible. We are always going to bring things and hold it against the standard of what God says in his word. And so no matter whether it's illegal, whether we are beaten down, like the song says, right? What you can take everything away. Take away my Instagram, take away my Facebook, take away this podcast even. We will be in those relationships that we have with our friends and family and the people that are close to us. We will still be preaching the truth and doing the very best that we can to represent who Christ is and what the body of Christ is through our lives.
And the Bible even says the way of the Christian is not supposed to be easy. We find joy in Christ. We find joy and happiness in our walk with Christ and our submission to God. But that does not mean life is supposed to be easy for us. That doesn't mean we're going to get our way. In fact, it means that we're supposed to not get our way, because we're supposed to face that opposition. We're supposed to face the trials.
Yeah.
That being said, we still have to hold to our convictions. We have to be beaten down. And it very well may eventually get to us being taken down to our last breath. And we're seeing that in other countries right now. I've said it on the podcast. I've told everyone I know, literally, that I'm so thankful to have been born in the US that I don't have to worry about a lot of that, but that doesn't mean I'm supposed to avoid it.
Yeah. And you know, when we see things like WAP and cuties and like, you know, we're going to speak out against it. And you better believe that we're going to have those voices against it. But the important thing with those is like, we still want to stay peaceful. We still want to stay legal. Like we didn't say, oh, we disagree with this, so let's go hack their website and let's take it down ourselves. And let's go to Netflix and let's raid the place and let's burn it all down to the ground.
Media's going to find this video, cut just that part out, and then we're going to get banned from everything.
Great. You know, that's not what you do when you disagree with something. You just voice your opinion and you stay strong by the conviction, and you stay consistent. Like we will be consistent with everything that we believe, or at least we hope we'll be consistent. If we aren't, call us out by all means. That's fine. We want to have integrity with this podcast. We want to have integrity with our lives. And you know, Instagram is where everybody's at. And so that's where we're at. And that's fine, because we want to reach as many people as possible. We want you guys to be able to hear what we have to say and to share and everything. But if we get like censored for saying things like, you know, that we believe people have the right to believe whatever they want, then we will try to figure out a way to get onto Parler. We will try to figure out a way to stay on YouTube, or to get these messages out, you know? And that's all that this is about. It's not about picking sides. It's not about even like picking one thing over the other. When we have the choice between convenience or values, we need to choose our values. When we have the choice between convenience or conviction, really, we have to choose our conviction. So that is what we will continue to do with this podcast, and that's what we will continue to do with our lives. Andrew, any closing words?
Just that, like I said, I would sooner respect someone I completely disagree with who is willing to take responsibility for whatever their actions are. And I should hope that the people that know me, the people who watch this podcast, would see what convictions I hold to and call me out for those I don't.
Yep. Well, everybody, next episode is going to be a little bit more positive, I hope. You know, we'll get some more news. There's a Project 86 live stream and a Disciple live stream coming up. So we'll post about those on our Instagram. So be sure to visit our website, www.thecastbros.com. Visit our Instagram @thecastbros to get all that fun information. Subscribe to our podcast. Subscribe to our YouTube if you're watching this, so that you can be notified when new episodes arrive. And please give us a 5-star rating and review if you like this episode. Till next time.
Take care now.
Bye-bye then.